Okay, good morning. I would like to welcome you to our adult education program, partially sponsored by our sisterhood about the Middle East and specifically the Abraham Accord. I'm Dr. Javits, Adult Education Chair, and I would like to acknowledge the rabbis in this group. So far, we have Rabbi Weil, who plays two roles as rabbi and Zoom operator, and Rabbi Neil Brief. And I would like also to acknowledge the groups that were invited, and we have some people from all groups. We have, of course, our Ezra Habonim Nile Township Jewish congregation people. We have people from Sisterhood, from Skokie Valley Synagogue, from Hila, my Hadassah group, and from Protect Our Heritage, the PAC. So welcome to all. Today we will hear a lecture of about 35 minutes and the rest will be questions. So please prepare your questions. And now I will introduce our speaker who is there with us just from Israel. Dr. Kedar, I will introduce him briefly so we have more time to talk about the topic. So Dr. Kedar spent 25 years in military intelligence, then about 27 years in the Arabic Studies Department at Bar Ilan University. He is also a member of research centers like the Begin Sadat Center in Israel. In addition to his scholarship, he's following Arab social media as he is interviewed by the regular Arab media, where he learns the currents and undercurrents of the Arab psyche. He also speaks in support of Israel in this venue. Okay, so Dr. Kedar, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Esther. And I also thank the Rabbi Weil, and all of the congregants who are right now here. Let me start with the end. Like an hour ago, 5 Israeli bombs hit an airbase in Syria named Shu'airat and destroyed apparently some storages of Hezbollah, Lebanese Hezbollah, who stored there some weapons which Israel doesn't like. Just to remind you, the same airport or airbase, Shu'airat, was the base from which the helicopters which took the gas bombs and gassed the people of a neighborhood near Damascus, the Ruta al-Sharqiyya, some 8 years ago when President Obama was in charge. And Assad, with this attack, killed some thousands of Syrians by gassing them to death. Everybody waited for the reaction of the American administration because President Obama repeated saying that chemical weapons will be a crossing of a red line. However, nothing happened, and the Shu'airat remained as it was. Only later, when another president replaced Obama, he took care of this airport or airbase, Shu'airat. So today, Israel took care of some things which are rather disturbing, were stored in this airbase. Now, why is it important to our presentation about the Abraham Accords? As you know, the Abraham Accords are full peace agreements, means normalization, agreements between Israel and the Emirates, Israel and Bahrain, and later on the Kingdom of Morocco joined these agreements, which actually give Israel a full peace agreement, which everything is included: tourism, investments, banking, arts, singers, academic cooperation, every kind of cooperation which you can think about, there is in these agreements, unlike the peace agreements which Israel has with Egypt since 1979 and with Jordan since 1994, which are partial peace agreements, which include a very small number of areas like security, oil, with Jordan it's water, and now electricity, but tourism very, in the margin, investments nothing, and so forth. So now we have full agreements with the Emirates, and the question is, what enabled these agreements, and maybe what are the challenges to these agreements as well, because they are challenges. First of all, we have to, when we talk about the Gulf Emirates and Bahrain, we have to actually enter their shoes in order to understand these people's mindset. They live right across the Gulf from Iran. Unlike Israel, which is rather further from Iran compared to the Emirates and Bahrain. Secondly, the Emirates and Bahrain have nothing to deter Iran. Israel, according to all kinds of foreign media, has very lethal weapons, which are the deterrence against Iran. They don't have any of this kind. Thirdly, they are much more vulnerable because all the oil industry and gas industry is exposed on the ground. And wherever you hit these countries, you hit either the ground or a gas pipe or an oil pipe or oil facility. So here in Israel, although we have gas facilities, they are in the sea, far from the shore, and all the gas is under the sea. So we are much more protected compared to these countries which are closer to Iran, much more vulnerable. So as much as Israel feels concerned about Iran, these countries, means the Emirates and Bahrain, feel much worse than Israel because of these elements. They are much more vulnerable, they're closer, and their industries are exposed. So they looked for a country which apparently is not afraid of Iran and Iranians' friends like Hezbollah. And what happened like an hour ago in Syria actually shows to everyone that Israel is not afraid, because Israel is bombing, just like what happened today. Israel has bombed in Syria who knows how many hundreds of times of Iranian militias, Iranian forces, and Hezbollah forces, and other militias which are supported by Iran. And Iran does not retaliate. Iran does not react. Lo and behold, why? How can we explain it that Israel keeps hitting Iranian and Iranian supporting targets in Syria, on left, right, and center in Syria, even in the eastern part of Syria, the further part from Israel, yet Iran doesn't retaliate and doesn't respond? How can we explain it? Well, there could be some explanations, especially the Israeli deterrence vis-a-vis Iran, and it's not on Iranian soil, so Iran really doesn't have the reason to attack Israeli soil or Israeli places or bases or whatever. So Israel doesn't give the Iranians the reason to hit Israel per se. If they find Israeli forces somewhere else, they might retaliate in such a way. But so far, Israel takes care of itself and doesn't send troops to any other places. So the Iranians cannot retaliate. So these people in the Gulf see that Israel is a country which can deter Iran. And since they are afraid of Iran way much more than Israel, they tried to be attached to Israel. Not that they think that Israel will come to save them if they are attacked by Iran. Nobody talks about this, and there is no such a thing. Israel will never send its army in order to protect other countries. But definitely, when they are looking around to a state which, time and again, hits Iran without fear, the only country which they find in this region is Israel. So they wanted to get in touch with Israel, get, I wouldn't say connected too much with Israel, but definitely connections with Israel are much, or make them feel a bit better vis-a-vis their enemy across the Gulf. So this is actually I would say, the mindset background of the Abraham Accords. So this is what exists. On this, you have all kinds of other reasons which came during the last, let's say, 3 years. First of all, a heavy pressure maintained by the Trump administration on the Gulf Emirates and on Bahrain to make peace with Israel. Trump had his own agenda in this issue, and of course it was coordinated with Netanyahu, with Israel's prime minister and everything. But I think that Netanyahu by himself could not maintain any pressure on the Emirates and on Bahrain. How can he maintain a pressure on them? But Trump, like America, definitely has a much heavier leverage over these countries, and this is what Trump wanted, to make a situation where Israel is much more safe and much more acceptable in the Middle East. Well, Trump has nothing to say to Syria. Trump has nothing to say to Iraq. Nobody will listen to him in those countries which are taken by Iran, meanwhile, or Yemen. So he looked for some countries who might listen to him because they are connected to the West. And he also wanted Saudi Arabia to join these agreements, but Saudi Arabia so far refrains from walking on the footsteps of the Emirates. And the question is why? Why did the Saudis not join these Abraham Accords? The reason is something which happened 3 years ago in the mid of September 2019. 3 years and 2 months ago. What happened on that night, between the 14th and the 15th of September, as much as I remember, the Iranians attacked facilities of Aramco, the Saudi-American, Arab-American company. Aramco, this is the initials of Aramco, and they actually paralyzed like 50% of the Saudi ability to export oil for a couple of months by this attack, which was very precise attack on 2 giant facilities of the Saudis. And the damage which they caused to the Saudi oil industry is estimated by billions of dollars. They have to repair everything, and meanwhile they couldn't export a large part of their oil exports. So, and the Saudis never retaliated. The Americans, Trump, never retaliated. And Iran walked out of this issue with no problem. And the Saudis learned their lesson. Apparently, the Iranians discovered something which the Saudis were doing those days, maybe some kind of talks with Israel, maybe, I have no idea what it was. And in order to hint to the Saudis, hey guys, you can't go forward with Israel. So this attack on the facilities of Aramco were actually a message to the Saudis from the Iranians, hey guys, beware. And if I'm correct, this is the reason why until today, Saudi Arabia has not yet joined the Abraham Accords. Of course, there are some kinds of signs of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. For example, the Saudis, first of all, gave a green light to the Emirates and Bahrain to have the relations with Israel. Without this green light, they wouldn't do it because, after all, they depend on Saudi Arabia to a large extent. Secondly, Saudi Arabia allows Israeli airplanes to fly above the Saudi soil on their new lines to Dubai, to Bahrain, to Abu Dhabi, and definitely it helps the Israeli economy and the Israeli good feeling, because many Israelis during the last 2 years since these agreements were signed visited Dubai, visited Abu Dhabi, visited Manama, is the capital of Bahrain, and have business there, and tourism, and even wedding parties. During the Corona time, when Israel was closed, they were open. So people in Israel went to Dubai to have their chasanas there. I think from the United States as well, were also some weddings in Dubai or Abu Dhabi or in the Emirates, because of the different regulations connected to gatherings during the coronavirus time. So definitely we have very deep relations with the Emiratis now, and it couldn't happen without the consent of the Saudis. So the Saudis, in their way, actually allowed these agreements between us and the Emirates, yet they themselves still refrain from joining these agreements. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the good parts and the good sides of these agreements. And definitely, when Morocco saw the benefits which the Gulf and Israel derive from these agreements, they decided to join it. And now Israeli high officials go and visit Morocco, like the chief of staff, the commander of the Air Force, and ministers of Israel keep coming in and out to Morocco. And the Moroccans definitely hug the Israelis in a way which as unexpected. And we have to remember that Israelis, not only from Moroccan descent, could go to Morocco for tourism for many years already, because the Moroccans actually allowed it. They didn't make an issue out of the fact that Israelis, even from other places in the world, could come to Morocco to visit. Another addition we have to add here, that in the Gulf Emirates, in the 7 Emirates of the UAE, United Arab Emirates, they had a representation of the Mossad for at least 20 years before the agreements were signed. Means from the beginning of this millennium, already the Mossad opened, of course it is undercover, but every official in the Gulf knows where the Israelis are and how to speak to them, how to call them, how to meet with them. And the cooperation between the Mossad and the local authorities in the Emirates were very tight already 22 years ago. This is one thing. Second thing, I have a friend, a lawyer. He actually, for 17 years, he makes living on agreements, commercial agreements between companies in Israel and companies in the Gulf Emirates. Means although there were no official relations between Israel and the Emirates, he was going back and forth to the Emirates with his American passport, signing agreements between Israeli companies, not with their, let's say, Italian alliances. No, gravity still works. Not undercover, really Israeli companies and Emirati companies, and it was on the ground, on the surface. Nobody even tried to hide it. So behind the scenes, there were relations between Israel and the Gulf, and what happened in these agreements is that these relations actually came out from the darkness, and now everybody can see them on the surface. And of course, many other things, as we mentioned. However, and here comes the big however. In my view, when the Iranians feel emboldened enough, if they feel strong enough, and they will feel angry enough at this advancement of the relations between Israel and the Gulf states, means the Emirates and Bahrain, the Iranians will tell the people in the Emirates, hey guys, party is over, and reduce the relations with Israel, if not altogether kick them out. They can do it. And if they feel that this is what they want to do, they will do it. Why? Because they can. And they don't like Israel. And they don't like the relations between Israel and the Emirates. And from their point of view, Israel can go to hell. So now the only question is, to what degree they are emboldened, to what degree they feel that they, as we say in Hebrew, ala sus, on the horse, means they feel that they are the masters of the place, and they can impose their agenda on others. And if they can, they will do it. The issue here is the returning to the nuclear agreement. I believe that if there was a rejoining of the United States to the JCPOA, the nuclear agreement which was signed in 2015, if President Biden came back to that agreement in a way or another, and of course defreeze the money which is frozen in the United States, the Iranian money, and lift all the sanctions from Iran, Iran would have felt much more emboldened compared to what it feels today. And it might cause them to tell the Emiratis, hey guys, get rid of the Israelis. This is my feeling. Of course, it didn't happen yet. And the Gulf Emirates are still with the relations with Israel, if I'm right, because the United States of America has not yet came back to the agreements of 2015. And this is what I feel, because the behavior of the Ayatollahs in Iran is actually connected to the way which they feel. And these feelings of the Ayatollahs are a result of how the world is looking at them, how the world acting vis-a-vis them, and what are the challenges which they face vis-a-vis the world. They are very, very much, I would say, sensitive to all kinds of variables, unlike, let's say, North Korea, which couldn't care less about anything. The Iranians are much more sensitive. And in my humble view, if they became, again, a regular country accepted by the world, thanks to the JCPOA or the renewed JCPOA, they would take advantage of this renewed status of an acceptable state in order to blackmail or to threaten the Gulf Emirates and Bahrain in order to get rid of the Israelis. Yet, I cannot prove it, but this is my feeling, and I warned here in Israel on right, left, and center, hey guys, don't count too much on these Abraham Accords with the Emirates, because these agreements or these accords are subject to revision after or if these people are being pressed by the Iranian government. However, what we see during the last 2 months in Iran actually give us much hope. The demonstrations, I would even say the rebellion inside Iran, is something totally different compared to the former rounds of demonstrations and violence in Iran, which were in 2014, in 2009, and formally in 2004. And those rounds of demonstrations were very limited, usually to 2, 3, 4 cities, were only limited to students usually, and lasted, let's say, a week, 8 days, 9 days, until they were crushed by the regime. What we see during the last 2 months, and I'm talking about something which started in mid-September. I think it was the 16th of September, when this lady, the Kurdish lady, Mahsa Amini, was murdered by the regime, by the tznius patrol, means the chastity or modesty patrol of the government, because one of her curls came out from the hijab. So she was beaten to death. And actually, it ignited the Kurdish district of Iran. Immediately, it spread all over Iran, hundreds of cities, townships, wherever you put a finger in Iran, you can see demonstrations against the regime. It started with women who actually took the hijab off their hands, and some of them were using them like flags against the government while exposing their hair. Others actually made a bundle of this and threw it into the fire to resemble the fact that they don't want it at all. And they were shouting, Mark Bar Dictator, means death to the dictator, means Khamenei. And what we see for the last 2 months, almost, something totally different compared to what we saw in the former rounds. First of all, the duration. We are talking about almost 2 months. In 4 days, it will be 2 months. Way much longer time compared to the former rounds. Secondly, the number of places compared to the handful of places former times. Now we can see this everywhere in Iran. The number of the people who take part in this demonstration, definitely different, now much bigger number. They really attack police stations, besiege stations, the civil police, the army bases. Pasdaran means the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard bases as well. And they actually lost their fear. And they attack these places, they burn them, and they burn pictures of Khomeini and Qasem Soleimani. And you can see more sectors, not only girls, not only students. You can see also in some places the bazaar people, means the marketplace people, the merchants are part of this. In some places we saw the teachers, the lawyers. Definitely we see more sectors joining these demonstrations. We also see different I would say intentions, because Iran, as you might know, is a state which is comprised of some 40 ethnic groups. The major ethnic groups are the Persians, who are like a third of the population, no more than a third. The Azeris in the north, Turkmens in the northeast, Baluchis in the southeast, Arabs in the southwest, a place name or an area named Ahwaz, and Kurdish, which are in the northwest part of the country, attached to the Kurdistan of Iraq and Turkey. And now what we hear from these people, that they want freedom not only from the Ayatollah regime. They want freedom from the Iranian state. They want separate states, ethnic states, Kurdistan, Baluchistan, Arabistan, Azerbaijan instead of Iran, and Turkmenistan and others. Actually, they want Iran to go through the same process which the Soviet Union was fragmented to some 15 countries, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Ukraine, all these countries which once were under the Soviet Union umbrella, today there are ethnic states. Yugoslavia fell apart according to ethnic lines. Now you have Serbia, you have Croatia, Montenegro, Bosnia, Kosovo, all these ethnic states. Czechoslovakia was also divided according to ethnic lines. Now we have Czech Republic and Slovak Republic. The same thing those peoples of Iran wants. They want to divide Iran to ethnic states. Why should they all live under the mercy and the yoke of the Persians? So now we see this, and if the regime collapses, they might have a chance to establish their own state. We see people defect, means policemen, members of the Basij, of the army, and the IRGC. People defect in front of the camera. They sit in front of the camera and they say, my name is such and such, or they hide their name if they are afraid of the families. And I am leaving the service because I don't want to take part in shooting into demonstrations of people who all they want is freedom. And many of them left the service, and this is a problem. Not only this, we see that people from the regime actually are running away from Iran, and many of them actually have an asylum in a place named Bodrum in Turkey. And many of them ran away to Bodrum in Turkey with their families in order to make sure that nobody tortures their families if they run away. What we see today in the streets, that if let's say clergy people are walking in the street with their turban on their head, means these hats, kids would come to them, kids or boys will come to them and throw away their hats, to humiliate them to such a degree. The hatred to religious people is in Iran. Iran is almost totally secular because of the religious oppression, and everybody should take it in account. Today, the world is much more aware of what happens in Iran because of the duration. Former rounds of violence, until the world noticed that there's something in Iran, the whole thing was actually crushed by the regime. Today, 60 days passed, and you can see demonstrations in Europe, in America, and not only Iranian expats, also others who are demonstrating for human rights in Iran. And because of people in the security organizations refuse to shoot into demonstrations, the Iranian regime actually recruited people from Hezbollah, from Lebanon, Arabs from Hezbollah, from Syria, from Iraq, and from Afghanistan to shoot into these demonstrations, because the Iranian security people they do not want to shoot into their brothers and sisters who are in the streets. So this is actually what happens there. The biggest disadvantage of the rebels is that they don't have a leadership. They don't, and Reza Shah, the son of the Shah, apparently does not want to lead this rebellion. Maybe personally he doesn't think himself fit to this mission. Yet I don't see in the horizon any other personality which can replace him. So maybe at the end of the day he will agree to come into this equation and maybe lead something against the Ayatollahs. Ladies and gentlemen, when Iran falls apart, and it's only a question of time, it could be this round, it could be in the next one, which might be even stronger. The whole Middle East will be different. First of all, the danger on the Abraham Accords will not be there anymore. Maybe Saudi Arabia will feel much safer to join the Abraham Accords as well, and maybe Oman as well, and many other countries as well, because they don't have the Iranian threat on their heads as it is today. Secondly, Lebanon will find a new path, because without Iran, Hezbollah eventually will collapse, especially its power. The same thing will be in Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and lo and behold, Gaza as well, because as we all know, both Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Gaza are supported by Iran. So if Iran collapses, the whole empire which they built in the Middle East based on these countries, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Gaza, will also collapse, just like the Warsaw Pact, which collapsed after the Soviet Union has collapsed in 1989. Ladies and gentlemen, this is actually what I wanted to say about the Abraham Accords, the background, the challenges and the chances of peace in the Middle East, means peace which is based on acceptance of the state of Israel, which is a new thing, and I would say very refreshing compared to the agreements which we had so far with Egypt and Jordan. And maybe this is actually the hope for Israel to be accepted in the Middle East by countries who care much more about their own population rather than the jihad against the state of Israel. This is my hope, but in Israel we have to be realistic. We cannot rely on hopes. Hopes are no way to shape a foreign policy. You have to be connected to the situation, and you cannot base your foreign policy on hopes and hallucinations. And okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes.
Dr. Kedar.
Thank you so
I
much.
would like now people to start asking questions either about Abraham Accord or anything about Israel and its neighbors. And once you raise your hand, I would like you to unmute and put your question forward.
So people can raise their virtual hands. It's probably the easiest thing to do, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. That way that Esther and I can see you and recognize you. But I'll just take the prerogative, if you don't mind, Esther, to ask a question.
Go ahead.
I started speaking already. Dr. Kedar, it was just fascinating and so clear, and greatly appreciate that. I have actually, I'm only going to ask one question, even though I have three questions, but I encourage other people too, because sometimes there's a tendency and desire to get all your questions in, but I want everyone to have an opportunity. So I'm choosing my one question. I'll save my other questions for later if there's time after others have asked. So my question is about, obviously, Iran right now. And, frequently countries around Israel have used their internal unrest in order to, as a subterfuge, or they would try to quell or distract people from their internal problems and challenges by starting up with Israel, by raising some sort of issue and sometimes fabricating something in order for the people. It's like the pressure valve to distract people away from their own service at home, and to start having them to hate the Zionist enterprise again. Is that something that Iran might do in order to distract people in their own country from their protests, or are we way past that in Iran?
Well, Iran is doing it anyway, all the time. Only recently, Khamenei announced, or he revealed something which nobody knew, that Israel, lo and behold, is behind the demonstrations in Iran.
Uh-huh.
Apparently, he actually sees me and some other Israelis like Dr. Eddie Cohen and Guy Maayan. We three have this flag, as you see to my right, this flag. This is Israel. This is the flag of the Ahwaz, the Arab district of Iran. And they are like overlooking the Gulf. And they are struggling for freedom for years already. And since we Israelis support them, we have this flag here in the media. 2 hours ago, I was speaking to the BBC Arabic service, the TV, and this was all over the world. People saw it, and this is the Ahwaz. Means we support the rebels in Iran for very well-known reasons. Okay, and the Iranians actually produce films or clips against me, against Eddie Cohen, and against Guy Maayan, against us Israelis, who are in the Twitter, in the media, keep tweeting or retweeting the whatever comes from Iran in order to encourage the Iranians to show them that the world is with them. So definitely, Khamenei said that Israel is behind the demonstrations in Iran. He forgot about Mahsa Amini, the Kurdish lady who was murdered. He forgot about the oppression of all the non-Persian peoples in Iran. He forget all these 43 years of mass killing in Iran, and only Israel is is in charge or is responsible for the domestic issues in Iran. Okay,
right.
We are used to it, and believe me, the Iranians do not buy it.
Right, I got you. Got it. Thank you. Other questions? The best way to do it is to raise your virtual hand. That's the best way to be recognized. If you can do that. If not, you can also. Yes, Manny, you're muted. Please unmute.
Can you kindly tell us whether there are other countries that are ready to fall in line and join the Abramovich Accords?
Well, Netanyahu, like 4 years ago, visited the state of Oman. Oman is a state to the southeast from Saudi Arabia, on the most south part of the Arabian Gulf, Arabian Peninsula. Yet they still wait with these agreements, apparently because they do not want to take side between Israel and Iran. So is Kuwait, still tries to not to be in either sides. Maybe if Iran is losing its fear, means nobody will be afraid of Iran anymore, maybe these countries will feel more comfortable to sit with the Israelis.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me put a question before people think about more questions. On my desk, there is the Quran. This is a translation to English. That's the best I can do. I cannot read Arabic. And in Quran is divided into chapter and verse, like many other scriptures. And in Surah number 17, verse 104, it says that they are accepted the Jewish story that we had 2 expulsions and perceived as punishment from God because we were sinful. But then that verse finishes like this, and I will read the English translation. I don't know if it's precise. We will gather together in a mingled crowd of many peoples and nations. So finally, after all the expulsion, there will be a gathering together. Well, if the Quran says that, why do they disturb the Zionist project? Or is the translation wrong?
Well, I can add to your question.
Okay.
2 points. First of all, chapter number 17, it has 2 names. The title. One is the Isra Mi'raj, means the night journey and the ascension to heaven. But the other name is Surat Bani Israel, means the chapter of Bnei Yisrael. Okay, so definitely it speaks about them. And the first verse of this chapter talks about Allah's servant who was taken by Allah at night from the holy mosque to the further mosque. Of course, the Islamic commentators said it is Muhammad who was taken at the night journey from Mecca to Jerusalem, as they claim. Yet there are commentators, especially foreign commentators, who at all think that he's talking about Moses as the Eved Hashem, the servant of God. So it is not about Muhammad; it's about Moses, who is the servant. Okay, so definitely this verse apparently was authored with Jewish influence, and we know that Muhammad was heavily influenced by Jews who were living in that area, especially one named Ka'b, Kaf Ayin Bet, who was actually a rabbi from Yemen, who ran away from Yemen and found asylum in Muhammad's home with his father and grandfather. And actually, according to all kinds of Islamic sources, he, means Ka'b, is actually the source of the Quran. He taught Muhammad all the stories from the Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, it means for the Bible, from the Mishnah, Talmud, Midrashim, and the Quran is replete with Jewish stories, and I highly recommend to read the Quran in any language, and this translation is rather good. And definitely, however, and now when it comes to your question, Muslims today claim that the Jews of today are not the Jews who are mentioned in the Quran. Those Jews actually disappeared. Nobody really knows who they are and where they are. Those Jews of today are converts from the 16th century from Khuzar, some place in the Balkans, where the Khuzari actually talks about. So they actually are newly, Judified people who have no connection to the Jews about whom the Quran is saying this. So they don't deserve, the Jews of today don't deserve to have anything which was given to the Jews in those days.
Interesting.
Okay, it seems
Thank you.
that political Islam is different than the original Islam.
Always.
Thank you. Cases.
Yes, sir. Question, why, if Iran is such a mighty force, has they not attacked Israel, because Israel is attacking all of their subsidiaries, let's say? That's my question.
Look, they read in all kinds of foreign media that Israel has something between 200 and 300 nuclear warheads to Israel missiles. That's what they read. I have no idea if Israel has one, but this is what they read in all kinds of websites. And you can find it as well. Just Google Israel nuclear warheads. You'll find a lot of websites which talk about this. So since they know to read from left to right, they believe that this is correct, and they are, they behave, because if they attack Israel, Israel might attack back with weapons which are not sympathetic at all. And just to remind you that Ukraine gave up on its nuclear arsenal in 1994, and today we all see what happens. And Gaddafi in Libya also gave up on his nuclear program And since 2010 or 11, he is not there anymore because he doesn't have this shield named nuclear shield or nuclear weapons. Many countries do not like the fact that Israel seemingly holding to these weapons, but after the Holocaust, we cannot allow ourselves to be without real protection. And since it's very hard to rely on other nations, as we all see and saw, so we, in Arabic you say, "Mathak zaharak illa dhifrak," means only you can scratch your back. I mean, only you know exactly. In Hebrew we say, "Im en anili mili." Okay, if I'm not for myself, who will help me?
Who am
And
I?
this is actually why the Iranians are deterred.
Right. Thank you. Good.
I do have another question. If I
But Ken, let me see if any others do. That's my rule. But you can keep your hand up if you want. Others before other questions, folks. All right, Ken. I'm sure. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, Stuart, please.
Yes, I was wondering to what extent did the United States, and in particular Jared Kushner, have in producing the Abraham Accords, and would it have been better to have had not have the Abraham Accords, in other words, to have all this going on under the radar without being made public?
Well, at least two books which were recently published talk about this. One is Jared Kushner's book. He talks about his role in all kinds of things, including this. I didn't read it yet, but I heard that he was actually describing all kinds of things which were behind the scenes towards the announcements of the Abraham Accords. And also Netanyahu. He recently published his autobiography, and he there also relates to these things. I didn't read both books yet, but it might be interesting. But don't forget that these are people who write about themselves. And sometimes people might write about themselves in a way which others would not write.
Right. So you're saying it's both self-interest and also political reasons for their desire to make this a major public.
Look, I'm talking, I say it objectively. These people who were involved in these issues might see things in another way compared to others who were not involved. So, what Jared Kushner writes about the negotiations and the preparations, all these things, might be different from what others would write if they had the information. But if you know that you read a book written by somebody, you know already to expect things that he wouldn't, let's say, blame himself for all kinds of scandals or things like this.
Right, of course, for sure. Yes, Susan.
Just a quick question, and maybe naive. Is there who and when and in what circumstances might somebody call Iran, somebody in the world or a group of people or countries really in the world, call Iran a bully and put a stop to it? Is there some force that I don't know about that can say to Iran, that's it, guys? Thank you.
Well, I was thinking that you quote me, actually. I wrote already years ago that the only way to make sure that the Iranians do not hold to a nuclear weapon is to send them a message saying more or less, hey guys, means Iranians, your time is over, your game is over. We don't believe even one word which you say, and you have 1 week exactly to dismantle all your facilities in this, and these places, and you have exactly a week to do it. If you fail to do it within a week, we are going to flatten you with the earth, and read our lips. Don't call us, we'll not call you. And we already are warming the engines and we are surrounding you. You have no way to run away from this, and you have exactly 1 week, period. Okay? If this, I would say, credible threat is being directed to them, they will abide, because this is a threat. They are not suicidal as a nation, as a state, as a regime. They are not suicidal. And if they understand that the only way to survive is to surrender and to give in and to give up on their nuclear program, they will do it. The only question is, who in the world, as actually this is your question, who in the world could send them such a message knowing that it can be carried out? Means who can do it? Only the United States of America, maybe with some other European countries, Australia, maybe the participation of Israel in the margin as well. But so far, we didn't see it. This is why you have to negotiate with them and pay for their consent. However, Israel can survive in the midst, even with Iran, even with Iran nuclear, only if Israel will be viewed as dangerous, invincible, and a country which nobody dares to mess with. If Israel has such an image, which is based on facts, Israel can get temporary peace. And this is what we have actually with all these Arab countries. It is not permanent. However, if Israel will be dangerous, threatening, invincible forever, Israel will enjoy temporary peace forever. This is how it works in the Middle East. This is not Europe here. This is not America here. We have to be realistic in this region where people are killing each other en masse because they are from different religion, from different sect, different nation, or different tribe, as we see in Libya.
Yeah.
This is, I would say, the most miserable area in the whole world because of the behavior of its inhabitants, from the Morocco all the way to Iraq, from Syria in the north all the way down to Yemen. Israel tries to survive in such an area, and Israel will be able to survive only if Israel is powerful.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Right. You don't say that in Al Jazeera, do you?
Of course I say it in Al Jazeera.
You do? That is the most miserable place on the earth in that regard?
They know it better than me.
Okay. I understand. I hear you. Gotcha. Yes,
I
Hillel.
want to add one comment about the elections because they are not understood. I want to say something and then please react, Dr. Kedar. People know about right and left in general, but they don't know what the issues in Israel are and what the difference between the right and the left in Israel regarding these specific elections. I want to give an example. One side wants to keep Israel as a Jewish state. The other side wants to have it as a generic democratic state, no specific rights to Jews, no law of return, and so forth. Another issue, one side wants to keep Tanakh, the Bible, as part of core curriculum, together, of course, with math, science, language arts, and so forth. The other one wants to make Tanakh an elective or nothing at all. It's not important, okay? One side is talking about the fact that in the Galil and in the Negev, there are people that are confiscating state land. They build all kind of makeshift stuff on it. Should we get the land back, or should we let them confiscate land forever? Okay. There are issues of personal safety. Should we go by the law about personal safety, or we should accept the terrorism as it is? these are not classic differences between right and left. These are the issues that goes in Israel. And that's why the right won. Dr. Kedar, what do you say about that?
Well, it reflects very well the issues here in Israel. And just to remind you what happened a year and a half ago in May 2021, the jihad wave which we had from Israeli Arabs who killed some Jewish Israelis, burned synagogues in Lod, and even one of my friends, Professor Abi Har-Even, was burned to death in Acre only because he was a Jew. And we learned the lesson that the jihadists here inside Israel, the Israeli citizens who believe in the jihad against Israel, should be put back into the places. They cannot take the place out of, out of our hand. This is our land, this is our country, this is our state, and we are going to defend it. And this is actually what convinced many Israelis to vote for Itamar Ben-Gvir, who once was considered to be far right and actually a demon, as the media made out of him. Now he might be our minister of Homeland Security. Now, we have another problem here in Israel, which is the killing inside the Arab sector. It means Arabs are killing Arabs. Last year, like 110 Arab Israelis were murdered by Arab Israelis. To that degree, it is a tremendous number. It's as schrecklich as, nora ve'ayom. Ben-Gvir said that if he becomes a minister of Homeland Security, he will try his best to reduce dramatically this number. And you know what? The Arabs, even Arabs say, if he succeeds to confiscate weapons from the hands of Arabs who happen to have them too much or too many weapons are free in the Arab sector, people will bow to him and they will kiss his shoes if he succeeds to have Arabs feel better, safer in their home, in their villages and their towns. And you know what? If you come to Israel, take a tour in the evening to any Arab village here in Israel. You will see how many people are shooting in the air just to show that they have weapons in order to signal to the other Hamula, to the other family that, hey guys, we also have weapons. This is some kind of lawlessness which engulfs the Arab world, the Arab sector here in Israel, and this has to be stopped. And for this, you need the Minister of Homeland Security, who is decisive enough to fight these things. And if Itamar Ben-Gvir succeeds, I think that the whole country, even the left, will thank him tremendously.
Interesting. Yes, Judy.
Thank you, Dr. Kedar. My question is, if Saudi Arabia joins the Abraham Accords, would Iran be more apt to contemplate attacking Israel? Thank you.
It's a very, very hard question to answer because so far it didn't happen. And if I'm right that the Saudis refrain from joining the Abraham Accords only because the Iranian threats or the Iranian attack, actually, which was in mid-September of 2019, this is not going to happen, because as long as the Saudis do not have assurances that their oil industry will not be attacked again by Iran, they will not go forward with Israel.
Yeah. Well, it sort of begs the question: at what point does the cost of joining the Accords, at what point does the benefit of joining the Accords supersede the cost of not doing it for Saudi Arabia? That's the obvious question. I'm a little surprised by your analysis. I'm not doubting it. I'm just surprised by it, that the reason that Saudi Arabia does not want to join the Accords is because it's nervous about Iran. We know it's always been nervous about Iran, but at what point does Israel's an alliance with Israel and the security that brings become the greater benefit than the cost of not having that security?
Look, I believe that if Israel was ready to sign a mutual defense agreement with Saudi Arabia. Means that Israel will come to fight for Saudi Arabia if Saudi Arabia is attacked again by Iran. This will cause the Saudis to rethink this issue, because a mutual defense agreement is something which the Saudis definitely need, because they are very, very weak, as we see in Yemen, as we see vis-a-vis the Iranian attack. They didn't do anything. And yes, unfortunately, the Saudis are a very weak country. I won't get into this, why I think so, but as a military, although they have the state-of-the-art weapons bought directly from the United States of America, yet, because of various reasons, especially the manpower which they have, this country is very weak. And if Israel will say, let's have join the Abraham Accords and we will fight for you, God forbid, so they might consider joining, because this way the IDF will be also SDF, I mean Saudi Defense Force.
Well, it'll be like NATO.
Right.
Other questions? Ken, do you want to get to your second question then?
No, I believe it's been answered as part of other people's questions. So I appreciate it.
There was a question, thanks. There was a question in the chat box, and I am mindful of time, but it's a good question. Susan then, or Ben Harris, asking about, you made this comment about Iran being like balkanized, that possibility. And the question is the reality of Iran coming apart or being balkanized in the next few years. I think that might be a note of skepticism. Is that really something that you think can happen? It seems so far-fetched, but perhaps it's not. I didn't realize as well that it had so many different sort of stitched together components ethnically.
I think that this is not only a possibility, this is inevitable. Because if you look at the world's history, there is not even one multi-ethnic state which remained as United States. I'm not talking about the United States of America, which is actually comprised of migrants who came from all over the world, and they live together. You are in one house, your neighbor is Chinese, another side is one from Africa or something. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about areas which are populated by a nation, like the Baluchis in southeastern Iran, or the Arabs in southwest Iran, Kurds, Turkmens, and so forth. This, and you know what? I highly recommend for everybody to go to Google ethnic parts of Iran, or ethnic units of Iran, and you will see the map. That it's like a puzzle. The Persians are in the center, and around them, the periphery, are all the non-Persian peoples, means nations. And there are many whom I didn't mention: Mazandaranis, Kashkais, Luris, Caspianis, many others who I believe no one heard about beforehand. The Baluchis, for example, are a nation which is only 20 million people, almost twice as big as the Jewish people. While the Jewish people, everybody in the world heard about them, the Baluchis, who heard about them, who knows about them? And they are divided between Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Okay? So, and they are yearning to independence, freedom, and their own sovereignty over their own soil. So one day it will happen. Whether it is close or far, I have no idea. I'm not a prophet yet, but it will happen. It happened in the Soviet Union. It happened in Yugoslavia. It happened in the Austro-Hungarian Empire as well, 100 and more years ago. It happened in Czechoslovakia. It happened. You know what? Will Scotland in the United Kingdom will forever remain in the United Kingdom? Is this kingdom really united? Or there are Welsh and Irish and English and in the north.
The
Welsh,
Scottish.
yeah.
The Scots. Okay, will Scotland remain forever? Will Quebec will forever be part of Canada? Will Catalonia forever be part of Spain after they voted like almost half to get rid of Spain and to have independence? Ethnicity is still alive and kicking. Unlike in the United States of America, which is comprised of migrants, Europe and other continents in the world are, to large extent, are ethnic units, and you cannot ignore it. Look, Belgium, even Belgium is a state with 3 ethnic groups. French means the Wallons, Flames means Dutch, and Germans. And they keep their culture, they keep the tradition, they keep the language, and they keep the mindset and everything. And they don't mingle with each other, they don't get married with each other. And even Belgium is ethnic state. Will they forever be together as one state? Who knows? But definitely there are all kinds of states which fell apart according to ethnic lines, and Iran, especially if the regime collapses, is one of the states which will be, I would say, a candidate to be fragmented, just like the Soviet Union and the others.
Okay, we'd allow one more question. The Urban family, please.
Hi. Dr. Kedar, thank you for excellent talk. My question is, how, since the Russians are so busy in Ukraine, how does it affect the involvement in Israeli military in Syria? We know that before there was some kind of quiet agreement between Netanyahu and Putin, that Putin would close eyes when Israelis are doing some actions. So how is it changing now? Thank you.
Well, as much as I read in the media, Russia actually took a good part of its military power from Syria to the Ukraine to refresh the people or the units which they have in the Ukraine. And not only this, the media mentioned that the Russia actually imports fighters from Syria, Arabs, to fight in the Ukraine. And because of the casualties, they are like 100,000 of people killed or injured. So they need to replace these fighters and many tanks, many other vehicles. And the Russians actually are in deep problem in the Ukraine. And only 3 days ago, they withdraw from the Kherson area. And maybe the Ukrainians will, at the end of the day, will win the war by chasing the Russians out in a way or another. So meanwhile, Russia apparently is reducing its units in Syria. And apparently they don't care so much about what Israel is doing in Syria.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kedar, and thank you to all participants, and we'll see you in further programming.
Yasher koach, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Esther. And
Okay.
have a warm winter.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much. We'll try. It was a pleasure to host you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
We'll talk on the WhatsApp. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
Shavua tov,
much.
everybody. Thank you.
Yasher koach.
Thank you.
ברוכים תהיו.